The clinking of plates rang out in my parents' cramped dining room, just behind the Retiro Park, where traffic from Cal de Alcalá sometimes shook the glass in the windows. Food was everywhere, thick slices of jamon curling on the edges, roasted peppers steaming, a pot of cocido with its muddy broth and hunks of sausage. My father ladled out more chickpeas, missing my plate. He grunted, setting the ladle down. "There you go, Miguel, you need to eat. Whatever wild ideas you have, you need strength for them." I hunched forward, letting my hair fall over my eyes. My grandmother, perched at the edge closest to the heater, sniffed loudly. She always did this when a conversation took a turn. My sister Carmen was watching me, actually watching, her brow furrowed, lips in that little half-smirk she wore when she expected drama. "So," said my Uncle Javier, tapping his spoon, "you heard back from the conservatory in Vienna." I shook my head. I didn't apply. The temperature dropped. My mother blotted her lips with her napkin. "But you always said you would." "I'm not going." I pressed my knees together, feeling my body close off harden. "I've decided to stay here. I don't want to study, not at the conservatory. I want to do something else." A long silence unspooled, as if none of us were breathing. My cousin Elena's boyfriend, some bank trainee whose name I could never recall, snickered into his glass. "He's going to become a painter now, no? Or a poet?" I stared at the tablecloth, tracing the blue rose pattern with one finger. "I want to make guitars. I want to be a luthier." It would have landed softer if I had confessed to smuggling or theft. My father's lower lip began to tremble, his fists tightening. My mother frowned into her wine, the glass buckling reflection. Carmen gave me a long look as if checking for a punchline. "A luthier?" Uncle Javier hooted. "Que dices, muchacho? There are factories in Valencia that pump out guitars for tourists, and you want to, what? Whittle wood in a basement, charging Americans to hear you make music with glue." His words bounced through the room, bouncing into my chest like heavy shoes. My grandmother crossed herself. "Ay, Miguel, you had every blessing and this is what you do with it." I looked at my father for some sign of mercy, a gesture. None came. He only stared somewhere beyond me, as if seeing the life he had planned for me slip out an open window. "You want to waste your education, your chances for this," he whispered. "No one respects," Elena's boyfriend began, but I cut him off with a word loud and foreign in the gentle domestic noise. "Basta," I said quietly. "I do." They all watched in disbelief. My resolve tasted bitter, my throat parched, but underneath an anchor of certainty held me steady. I stood, scraping my chair, and excused myself. As I moved to my childhood room, now littered with old textbooks and a few warped pieces of spruce and cedar, I heard my father whisper, so softly no one else might have caught it. "What a waste." Back then, in that tiny bedroom, I sat at the edge of my bed and felt the weight settle in. Outside, traffic lulled and the city's heartbeat retreated into night. I shut the door, my palm pressed against the wood, and let the silence overwhelm me. It was not the first time I felt alone, but now it was laced with a quiet steel that would carry me for years. I spent the next 3 years in the back of a workshop in Lavapiés, sweeping shavings from the floor and inhaling the scent of old wood and hide glue. The proprietor, Don Isidro, was a tall, silent man who believed that any question asked twice was a sign of inattention. My hands grew thick with calluses, and the dull ache in my shoulders became a familiar companion. Madrid's summers pressed hot air through the open windows. Tourists wandered in and out looking for souvenirs. Don Isidro would nod toward the display window, and I would carry out half-finished guitars, letting the customers stare at the whirled grains of rosewood, the polished faces of spruce. Each night I stayed long after the door shut, practicing bracing patterns and tapping the wood for hidden voices. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the shop mirror, thin hair wild, sawdust clinging to my sweat, and felt a knot in my throat. "Ridiculous," I could hear my uncle's voice say. I wrote home sometimes. Carmen sent birthday cards with polite, tentative notes about her growing family. My mother's letters became less frequent, no longer pressing for news. My father never wrote. Money was tight, tighter after Don Isidro passed away, the workshop shuttered, and I found myself in a drab apartment off Cal Atocha, sharpening chisels at a kitchen table. Flea markets supplied scraps of wood, discards from construction sites, odd planks, occasionally a precious block of cypress. I sneaked into music shops, tracing my fingertips over fine guitars, memorizing their shapes. On cold nights, hunger gnawed at me, but I reminded myself that every master starts as an apprentice. A few months into this exile, I bumped into an old friend at the metro. Lucas, a pianist who had made his way through the very conservatory my family dreamt for me, he eyed my threadbare jacket and rough hands with a pity I recognized too well. "You look tired," he said, lacing his words with concern. "You could teach, at my school, supplement your—" "I'm making guitars," I answered, as if reminding myself, "what, you make any money?" "Not yet." He smiled gently, as people do in the face of an impossible hope. As we parted under the burnished lights of Seoul Station, he pressed a few coins into my hand. I tried to refuse, but he insisted, "Buy yourself a decent meal, brother." That night I didn't eat. I bought sandpaper and glue. Progress was slow, infuriatingly so. The first guitar I completed collapsed in the middle, soundboard too thin. The second sounded dead, a colorless, lifeless thing that mocked every hour I spent coaxing it. But the third, born from a slab of cedar and cheap Brazilian rosewood, sang with an unexpected fire. The trebles were silver bright, the basses warm. That day, as I strummed the first chord, my voice cracked. "You live, don't you?" I whispered into the empty room. A guitarist from the neighborhood, a retired busker with battered fingers, came to try her. He played a little Malagna, tilting his head at the vibration. For a moment the room in my apartment glowed with possibility. He left a €20 note on the table, winking. "Not bad, Chico, better than what the shops sell." It was enough. Crumbs, small commissions, word of mouth. My work started to circle through local music haunts, the smoky bars and tiny theaters tucked on dim Madrano streets. Someone called to order a guitarra flamenca for his nephew. A music student commissioned a classical model. I obsessed over details others didn't notice: the sweep of the heel cap, the shimmer under shellac, the gentle scoop at the fretboard's edge. Every few months, Carmen visited the city, always with a new story about my parents' declining hopes. By then, our conversations were hesitant, fragmented things, as if we were picking through broken tiles trying to find a pattern. "They think you're lost," she told me one spring afternoon over paper cups of café con leche, "that you've chosen hardship." "Maybe I have," I shrugged, "but it's mine, I'm not lost." My voice brooked no argument. Sometimes at night loneliness crept in with the cold. I could hear my family's laughter from 100 dinners ago. Still, every dawn I woke to obey the wood, its quirks and demands. Luthiery is a life of monastic patience. The smell of shellac, that faint tang of alcohol and resin, became the scent of endurance. Years passed, slow as sap rising. The turning point came unexpectedly. A Belgian guitarist, Clarisse Legrand, was touring Spain. I barely remembered our first meeting, a passing introduction at a neighborhood bar. She was looking for a new sound, nothing commercial, she said. Lucas, the old friend, sent her to my workshop. He must have believed just enough. I presented her my most recent guitar, Coco Bolo sides, soundboard of European spruce, the Rosetta mosaic I had inlaid myself over long winter nights. She ran nimble fingers along the strings, testing with a flamenco rasguido, then a gentle classical prelude. When she finished, she didn't speak for a moment. "It feels like it's breathing," she finally said. She purchased the guitar on the spot, offering almost double my asking price, and took it with her for the remainder of her tour. Weeks later, an email arrived. She had performed at the Auditorio Nacional, the largest hall in Madrid, and praised the instrument in the press. Now people came, people with names, with reputations. Orders trickled and then streamed. A guitar of mine sat for photographs on the velvet of the 8 Neo stage. Music critics began to ask, "Who is this Miguel Morales?" I received commissions from London, then Vienna, even Tokyo. I saved every clipping, every letter, not out of pride, but as proof, something solid for when the doubt returned. When my father's friend, Don Alfonso, recognized my name in a magazine, it forced the first awkward reconnection. He called, apologizing for the intrusion. My family heard of my work not from me, but from whispers in the community, from priests, from violinists who had played my guitars, from music teachers who envied my touch. Yet for years I didn't return home. I thought I didn't want to, or perhaps I feared I would find nothing had changed. It was Carmen, as always, who drew me back. "You should come," she urged. "Just for one night, they're proud, even if they don't know how to show it." So I went. The walk to my parents' building felt as if I had never left, except that everything seemed smaller. I carried my latest piece in its blue velvet case, a guitar made from rare Madagascar rosewood, neck inlaid with my initials, simple, not ostentatious, beautiful. Dinner was quieter than any I remembered. The table was the same, now burnished with age. My father had gone greyer, his hands shook as he poured the wine. My mother hovered at my side, uncertain. "So, what brings you home?" my father asked finally. I set the velvet case down carefully beside my chair. "I want to show you something." The room watched as I opened the case and lifted the guitar, cradling its polished back toward the yellow light. Light danced on the shellac, the rosette flickered with subtle red and blue tiles. My father's breath caught. Carmen's son, aged 6, reached out with a tentative finger but stopped, respectful. I set the guitar on my lap. My hands no longer trembled. How strange to find yourself calm at the moment you once dreaded. I played a simple piece, not a flashy show, but a lullaby my mother used to sing. Each note lingered, rich and clear in the air. The tone filled every inch of that little room, the parlor, the hallway, and for the first time I watched my father close his eyes, overwhelmed by what he heard. When I finished, the silence lingered, pulsing like a heart. My uncle Javier, invited by Carmen, stood as if struck. "That is yours, you made that." I nodded once. My mother's eyes were bright with tears, my father's mouth working at words he couldn't say. Carmen caught my eye and smiled, real pride lighting her face. My father reached out, touching the guitar's headstock gently. "It is beautiful, Miguel, it sings." I let the silence contain us, a silence thick with regret, apology and acceptance all tangled together. "People play these all over," I said softly. "Your friends have probably heard them already, but tonight I wanted you to hear this one here. I made it thinking of this house." A long pause and then my father swallowed, his voice rough. "You did what you said," he whispered. "You built something real." Then he got up, walked behind me and placed his hands on my shoulders. Their grip was firmer than I remembered. For the first time he did not look past me or through me. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "I was wrong, Hijo. I just didn't want you to be hurt." I nodded, feeling a release so profound it hollowed me out and filled me all at once. After dinner, as Carmen's family trickled out and my uncle raved about the guitar to anyone who would listen, my father lingered. He ran his thumb along the rosette, inspecting details he had once dismissed. "You give wood a soul," he murmured, almost to himself. I caught sight of my own reflection in the glass of the china cabinet, taller now, wind-worn and not at all ridiculous. The streetlights from Cal de Alcalá flickered through the window. Madrid's night air swirled around the old block. I stood outside their building, velvet case in hand, breathing in the city that had shaped me. All the mockery, the doubting looks, the empty nights, they belonged to another life now, though the memory would not leave me. I was home, not for good perhaps, but I had returned, proven not by arguments or speeches, but by something I had coaxed with patience and pain from my very hands, living and luminous, impossible to deny. Even in silence some songs endure.